The planned business scenario of our presentation today is the following. A new potential customer of a credit institution would like to obtain a subsidized credit from the New Hungary SME loan construction. We will present the pre-filtering of this applicant company, starting with the checking of the hard exclusion criteria, which are sometimes called KO criteria. We also present the product selection, the review of exposure, pricing calculation, and the handling of documents and conditions. When integrated in a real banking environment, the customer search would typically be started from a banking front end. The applicant is first searched in the bank's internal customer database. If the applicant is not yet a customer of the bank, then a search is performed in the public company database, that is called OPTEN in Hungary. In our case, the pre-filtering is launched using a simulated customer, therefore we will now skip the search in these databases. If the applicant is not found in either of these databases, then its attributes would have to be entered manually by the user of the SHR system, typically a customer relationship manager. After the customer selection, the system already starts evaluating business rules in the background based on data gathered from external systems. Firstly, in the screen we'll simulate a banking product portfolio where the evaluation of certain rules has already happened in the background. For example, based on the public company database called OPTEN, the system has checked whether the applicant's legal status is appropriate or if there are any procedures in progress against it, respectively whether it has been registered in Hungary. The tree structure displays the usual active and passive products of a commercial bank, starting from time deposits through the bank accounts to financing products. Here we first select the financing bank guarantee menu item. Within this, if we open the tree structure, we can see the current grouping that's used for financing products, so there are cash and securities covered products and products with other covers. Our customer would like to apply now for a product called SME loan construction, which is categorized under products with other covers, in the subgroup government-supported loans. Therefore we tick the checkbox next to government-supported loans and click the button Start Product Process. This way we have launched the credit pre-filtering. The applicant details screen is displayed first. The top part displays the panel called Loan Requester Base Data. This enables the identification of the customer based on its most important attributes. This panel will be displayed on the top of every screen, and its content could obviously be modified according to business requirements and local conditions. Below that, the customer information screen area contains the applicant's most important attributes that are relevant for the pre-filtering. In this case, this information is coming from the public company database OPTEN into the pre-filtering system, but as I've mentioned, in some cases these would have to be filled manually. Some fields are marked with a red asterisk, which means these are mandatory. These fields are evaluated in some of the customer segmentation and exclusion rules. One example is the operation status coming from OPTEN, since in this case the implemented rules only allow financing companies having a certain status. Those under bankruptcy, winding up or liquidation procedures are excluded from crediting according to the rules currently working behind the system. The same screen area displays the customer's scoring value and its validity period, so we can see whether a valid scoring of this customer is available. This is important because when having a valid scoring, the system will not just offer a credit product to the applicant during the pre-filtering, but will also review that the credit with the requested amount does not violate the limits of the customer's credit capacity. In case of new clients that haven't yet been scored, the system also strives to perform a similar check. In these cases, a preliminary scoring value is calculated, which is an indicative scoring value based purely on publicly available financial metrics. Of course, this is not exact at this time, and it lacks the customer evaluation metrics that are primarily non-financial based, for example behavioral scoring. Despite this preliminary scoring value can help the customer relationship manager to present an indicative offer, even if the scoring value might eventually be overwritten during the actual scoring. This way a completely rule-based scoring system can be implemented, by augmenting the current set of scoring rules with rules evaluating behavioral scoring and other quality metrics. On the right side of the panel we can see flags representing some exclusion criteria. In a real environment, these flags are automatically set by the system by calling the appropriate services. But for checks that are performed manually anyway, the system offers an instrument called manual check conditions, that is, conditions that have to be checked manually. It is a great advantage of SHR that the set of these checks is specified in business rules, so they can be extended in a flexible way without changing program code. Below the panel we can see the main activity screen area. The upper row displays the applicant's main activity is stored in the public company database. Since in some cases this activity may not be the one providing the majority of revenue, the customer relationship manager has to enter the actual main activity. Many activities could be excluded from crediting based on rules according to the credit policy. The actual main activity is also checked by some of the rules behind SHR. For example, the credit program for agricultural development is only available for customers pursuing agricultural activities. Besides this, there are economic activities that have no corresponding public activity code, but are usually excluded from banks crediting. These can be, for example, the pawnshops or the sex industry. The relationship manager has the option to enter these in the bottom row of the panel. The panel for data originating from the financial report displays the customer's most up-to-date balance sheet and profit and loss data available from OPTEN, and in case of private entrepreneurs and primary producers, the data of their tax declaration. Obviously, the set of data could be extended according to the requirements. Currently those are displayed that are evaluated in any rule. For example, the negative value of equity capital excludes the applicant from obtaining most product groups. Also, the revenue partially determines whether the given customer is part of the segment served by the credit institute. Besides this, balance sheet data is displayed that can help the customer relationship manager to analyze the customer's economic situation in a simple way. For example, by calculating a simple liquidity metric or return on equity ROE. If no account data is received from OPTEN or it is not up to date enough according to the requirements implemented in the underlying rules, then the user has to enter this manually, based on the information provided by the customer. Also, as both the internal and public databases that SHR turns to for information on the customer can sometimes contain errors, all data handled by the SHR system can be corrected manually on the screens. However, the system will then enforce the verification and approval of all such manual changes in otherwise automatically obtained data. Existing data can be modified using the pencil icon next to the given row, and if we'd like to insert a completely new data row, that can be done on the subscreen available by pressing the plus button. In the procedure data screen area we can find the ongoing or terminated procedures against the applicant, as retrieved from the public company database OPTEN. There are business rules in the SHR system that specify which procedures will be taken into consideration. For example, only procedures currently in progress or the terminated ones as well. In case of terminated procedures, these rules also specify for what period these are monitored retroactively, causing the applicant's exclusion from financing. On the panel available product groups there is a tree structure that can be drilled down starting from the main product group down to the product level and serves for the presentation of available product groups based on the information available at this point in time. This tree structure is also determined by business rules only. At this point the rules checking the customer's segmentation criteria will be evaluated. This may result in the exclusion of the customer from the whole crediting process, or that the applicant can only apply for products providing any collaterals or very specific collaterals like cash deposit and securities. These usually undergo a less stringent examination due to their lower risk. A green check mark signals that the given product group is available to the customer, and next to the groups marked with red X the reject reason button appears. Pushing this button, SHR displays why the given product group is not available to the applicant. So if we click the button Reject Reason, we can see two conditions not met. Despite this, the products from this group can still be made available to the applicant, because you can see at the bottom of the screen that there is a possibility to request an approval for these exceptions. If we initiate an approval request for the listed exceptions, that means actually collection and late payment conditions will be temporarily ignored. For each of these, a condition is created, and its approved status will be enforced later in the credit application process. The system permits continuing with the credit application until the approval or rejection is performed at a determined point in the process. Following this, we can see in the tree structure that the customer-related criteria are already met, but the products are still not available. Let's click again on the button Reject Reason. In this case, the credit applicant's equity capital is negative, therefore only products with strong collaterals like cash and securities covered products can be requested by this customer. We also see what conditions cause this. For the product group without these collaterals, the equity capital should be greater than 0, or the applicant should be a startup enterprise, because in that case financial reports won't be checked. But this company is not a startup enterprise. Despite this, the product group can still be made available because at the bottom of the screen there is a possibility to request approval for this exception case to ignore negative equity capital. If approval for this exception is requested, then a condition is created, and its approved status will be enforced later. Such dynamic handling of conditions is one of the strengths of SHR. This enables the handling of exceptions in a controlled way as part of a closed process. So, until the approval or rejection is performed, pre-filtering can proceed. But obviously the next step in the loan process, called loan submission, can't be started without approving these conditions. Now we navigate to the condition screen, where we'll see the conditions to be reviewed for approving these exceptions. Besides this category, there is a so-called group of individual checks. The user is able to create these anytime by pressing the icon with the plus sign. If the user created an individual check condition, by this he delegates the decision and the associated responsibility to another person entered by him as the approver of the condition. This can happen if a decision is required in a situation that is not covered by the actual set of implemented business rules. Independently from this, the user can perform his or her own task. The conditions for approval of data modifications are created when modifying data that was already considered valid. Such a modification can result in a totally different flow of the process, and may require that human approvals will be enforced again. Even if data modifications do not result in a different process flow, SHR enforces that the modifications are verified and approved by the authorized persons. During the scenario, the Customer Relationship Manager has requested approval for 3 exceptions, resulting in the creation of 3 conditions: first, ignoring of the negative equity capital; second, the existing late payment; and third, encashment conditions. Opening the conditions details using the pencil icon, he or she can explain by using the comments function why he or she decided to request approval for these exceptions. This function can be found at the bottom of each screen, and its working is straightforward. The text of the comment is entered into the text box, then the Add button is clicked. Then the enter text is displayed together with the creation date and the creator's name. Following this, we go to the menu and click the menu item Offered Collaterals. Here we can see the high-level descriptions of possible collaterals specific to the customer segment. At this point in the process, it's enough to know only the type of collaterals offered by the applicant. We will now check Private Joint and Several Guarantee, Garantiqua Joint and Several Guarantee and Private Ownership, and we click the button Next Task. The system takes us to the screen Load and Check KHR Data, where we can find the customer's financing deals with other banks. KHR is the Hungarian Central Credit Information System. Currently the customer has 2 live items in KHR, so these do count into its exposure later, charging by default the total limit. KHR doesn't provide information about the type and current outstanding amount of the debt. That is why the total contracted amount will be calculated against the total limit. We could also enter the still outstanding amount of debt in the given currency. In case of modifying the amount, automatically a document condition is created according to the current rules behind SHR, because this information has to be backed with a certificate. If no amount is entered, then automatically the contracted amount is taken into account. Based on the expiry date in KHR, the system automatically categorizes the deals to the short-term or long-term sublimits. Furthermore, there is a possibility to indicate whether the deal is a subsidized facility or not, because there are product combination rules related to deals guaranteed by Hungarian Credit Guarantee Limited, or shortly HG. In case of the first item, we want to set that this is not a subsidized credit, that is, it shouldn't charge the subsidized sublimit, so we click the pencil icon next to the actual item. The system takes us to the screen displaying the details of a KHR item. On the right side of the screen we find the option subsidized credit and a field to enter the amount of outstanding debt, so at the first one we set the option no and we don't change the amount of outstanding debt, so the contracted amount will count in the exposure. Pressing the OK button takes us back to the KHR main screen. Since we've performed all checks and verifications related to the applicant that can be performed on the currently available data, we navigate to the screen Affiliated Undertaking, Private Persons.